Hey, Internet! We are the Music Nerds Record Club, sometimes called the Nerdcast. And my name is Andrew William Smith, your teacher on the radio. I've got with me Rick Quinn out of Nashville, Tennessee, Joe Guinness out of New City, New York, and Mark Creator, my brother from Cookeville, Tennessee. And this is our 25th ever monthly music nerdcast. That's excluding our 7 annual reports that we've done at the end of every year, starting in 2020, before we even had our name and before Mark even knew that we were doing podcasts. So welcome aboard. And I'm our host for tonight. I blog at teacherontheradio.com. I also do a radio program at WTTU 88.5 FM. A lot of those playlists are on that website. And for my day job, like Professor Creator, I work at Tennessee Tech University, where we are both instructors of the youths, the 18 to 20 somethings who sign up for our general education courses, such as Introduction to Theater or topics in American literature. So several years ago, I read a book called The Poetic Songverse that explained that you can read popular music as a literary genre, separate from the people who study it as a musical technician. And I became very, very fond of requiring all of my students at the end of every semester for their final project to make a playlist and then to do some writing adjacent to that playlist. And since it is April, the worst and best month of the academic year for us, I have Aprilitis every April. It's the end of the semester. I am spitting blood and stumbling around like a man who doesn't know what day of the week it is or doesn't know what day of the week the Bruce Springsteen concert is on. In a few weeks, I'm just kind of stumbling around town, not sure where I am, what my name is, and I decided to do the meanest and funnest thing I could possibly think of, which is make all of you do the final exam for the American Mixtape class, which was to make a playlist of 15 to 25 songs, put a theme on it, and try to base it in American-based artists. And our first person to go is actually going to be a pre-recorded segment by Scott Greenberg, who's going to begin his segment by apologizing to us for having missed being in person, because he's actually working in the music industry tonight. He's working in the professional music industry tonight, which makes me really happy for him. Here's out of Charlotte, North Carolina, our favorite nerd, Scott Greenberg.
What's up, my nerds? It's Greenberg. I am so sorry I can't be there with you tonight, and I am saddened to end my run as the Lord of Perfect Attendance. The title of my American mixtape is For the Love of All That Is Righteous on E Street, I beg of you, please, don't call it Americana. When I started work on this assignment, my mind went many places, but I was always drawn back to my roots and my love of American roots music, a fertile musical continent that goes by many names: cowpunk, roots rock, no depression, alt country, insurgent country, alternative, and my least favorite of them all, you guessed it, Americana. Americana bugs me because it just sounds like a reductive catch-all marketing term. But I digress. Like so many others back in the day, I grew up hating country music. But sometime during my freshman year at Michigan State University, I had the revelation that I might like country music if it had some punch to it. The universe heard me, and it sent Jason and the Scorchers and Lone Justice my way. These were my musical gateway drugs. While I was never a hardcore punk, the hybrid of punk energy and American roots music was irresistible to me. I was a cowpunk, and I'd finally found my tribe. Unfortunately, my tribe was scattered about so randomly that it was damn near impossible in the pre-internet, pre-social media world for all of us to find each other. Still, I was hooked. I was a sucker for damn near any band who wore bolo ties, and it wouldn't be long before I bought my first bolo. From there, I explored and continue to explore the spectrum of American roots music, both far and wide. Now, this playlist is not meant to be a definitive anthology. In the interest of keeping it tight, I have decided to only include bands and artists whose music has traveled with me through significant stretches of my life. To clarify, that can mean anywhere from 3 albums to 3 decades, maybe even longer. These are bands and artists who push the boundaries of what American roots music can be. I've also made the conscious decision to not include already well established bands and artists who inspired the bands and artists on the list, and I've also made the conscious decision to not include any covers. That's my list. Hope you enjoy it. What have I been listening to? Creature of Habit by Courtney Barnett, Mutiny After Midnight by Johnny Blue Skies, and High Noon Hymns from the Long Riders. See you next month. Greenberg out.
Good evening, all. When Andrew assigned this playlist end of the semester project for us, I immediately turned to the music of my high school days, the 80s, and half jokingly, I've often asked and answered the question, what radicalized me? I would point to John Mellencamp's Scarecrow album from the mid '80s as a socially conscious look at America. And so the title of my project, my American Mixtape, is lifted from Ronald Reagan's 1984 kickoff commercial, Morning in America. This sort of triumphant look at the new day that Reaganomics was promising us all, and how everything was just going to be hunky dory. But what I found in my youth and much later in my adulthood is that there was a strong stream of music that offered a counter narrative to this shiny look at American prosperity. There were other stories going on, and we were hearing about it in the music of the times. The 80s were a time of individualism, unfettered capitalism, and the glorification of wealth after more than a decade of social upheaval. We saw popular books like Bret Easton Ellis's Less Than Zero that pulled back the curtain on creeping nihilism and sort of the vacuous morality of the elite class and comfortable suburbia. The Cold War was teetering, and our anxiety was papered over by forms of patriotism. But in the popular music of the decade, there were a number of other voices that were being brought to the fore. So contrary to the myth that protest music ended with the 60s, there's more to the music of the MTV generation than just synth beats, big hair, and escapism. So what I tried to do is pick out 20 songs from mainstream rock and pop, hip hop, new wave, and college radio that lifted subversive history to the fore and showed another side of things. These songs captured a decade's underside and sketched a landscape still impacting the 21st century. And I'll briefly go through those, what is included in my mixtape. Allentown by Billy Joel, Born in the USA, Bruce Springsteen, B-Movie, Gil Scott-Heron. That song could be a playlist in and of itself. The Message, Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, Rain on the Scarecrow, John Mellencamp, Talking About a Revolution, Tracy Chapman. Threw in a couple of Canadians here under the border. If I Had a Rocket Launcher, Bruce Cockburn, Rockin' in the Free World, Neil Young, Fight the Power, Public Enemy, The Flowers of Guatemala by R.E.M., The Boy in the Bubble, Paul Simon, Exhuming McCarthy, R.E.M., People Have the Power, Patti Smith, Bonzo Goes to Pittsburgh, The Ramones, The End of the Innocents, Don Henley, Fuck the Police, NWA, The Walls Came Down, The Call, Channel Z, B-52s, Sign of the Times by Prince, and Boy Blue by Cyndi Lauper. And that's my mixtape.
Yeah, we've all been having some technical difficulties here. Thank you, Scott, for getting us started, and Rick for following up. And I know everybody's going to want to listen to these playlists, so I'm going to be putting them I'm going to try to put them on my blog, www.teacherontheradio.com, and also put them on my Facebook. On Facebook, I am Andrew William Smith. I encourage you all to post yours on your socials as well. I keep looking at Scott's beautiful face here on this from earlier, and I forget that he's not here, but he's working in the music business. He's bringing concerts and live music to the masses in Charlotte, North Carolina. So, Scott, we're so sorry you couldn't be here tonight. And I think I had a technical difficulty at the beginning of your blurb, but hopefully most people caught most of it. By the way, I was just helping our absent nerd, Gus Creeder, with an article in which I'm featured at the Tennessee Tech Oracle, the college paper, and I was sending some suggested corrections. I worked in college and high school journalism, and I work in DIY journalism, print journalism, fanzines, and there's always going to be a typo and a correction. So a Music Nerds without some technical difficulties would not be the Music Nerds. And so I went to, I'll tell you about my playlist now, back to the topic. And on deck, we have Mark Creeder, Gus's dad. By the way, this is Gus's last Tennessee Tech Oracle as editor-in-chief, a month out, or just a few weeks out from his graduation from the baccalaureate at Tennessee Tech. And we're so flippin' proud of Gus Creeder, I can hardly stand it. Okay, so my title of my mixtape is Room for All, a hippie hillbillies mixtape of hope. And it really arose out of attending the No Kings rally in Nashville, Tennessee. Full disclosure, I've got great comrades holding it down here in Cookeville. The local liberals and progressives and leftists of Cookeville have been holding it down at the No Kings rally on our square in Cookeville, much to be harassed by the local Republicans and trolled by the local MAGA community. I feel insecure ever since I got in trouble in my hometown several years ago. I feel insecure going to rallies in Cookeville, but they had almost 1,000 people in Cookeville. So I went to Nashville where there's thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people. And it was so invigorating. It was so beautiful. It was so inspiring. And I felt something kind of break inside me. My heart broke. And what came out of that heartbreak was hope. I mean, my heart broke in part because they had singing resistance. You had these, not A-list, but definitely like strong B-list Nashville singer-songwriters leading us in like kind of choral protest music. People like Chris Matthews and Mary Gaucher were there leading us in song. It was phenomenal. And so my heart was just opened up, and I felt this feeling, first of all, that I had to go home and make a playlist with all the feelings that I had for that day. And I made a couple of drafts before I ended up with the final draft that we have tonight. But what I realized is as weird as the world is, we cannot give in to despair. We must dig in to fight. We can be as unrealistic and unfettered in our imaginations as possible and believe in our dreams. We can join the movement no matter how imperfect and performative that movement is. We can seek friends and comrades and fellow travelers near and far. We can unite with a stranger just because you like, the cardboard sign that they've brought to the No Kings rally. So this mixtape moves for me from that moment, from that spark and that spirit, but it takes into my identity as a Southerner. I'm an adopted Southerner, sometimes called a Yankabilly, but I refuse the derogatory carpetbagger. I've lived in the South longer than anywhere I've lived in my entire life. Greenberg, again, wish you were here. He noted that he's been living in North Carolina for 20 years. I've been living in Tennessee for 30 years. This is longer than anywhere else that I've ever been. And I've really internalized the beauty of kind of Southern DIY culture, specifically in the Appalachian region, and related to kind of the experience of working class Southerners and old time kind of gospel music mixed with bluegrass and traditional music that you might hear on an Alan Lomax archive, music performed with traditional instruments like fiddle, banjo, guitar, and mandolin. And also in this time when country is coded red hats, red meat. It's the code of the MAGA movement. And I wanted an overtly kind of lefty mixtape, hippie, hillbilly, hopeful mixtape. And so I put together 25 songs. And I was thinking when I said this, it's a 15 to 25 song rule. I knew I was going to have 25 songs. But if you notice, 25 songs comes out to be about 90 minutes, which is about the length of two 45-minute sides on an old 90-minute cassette tape. So that size is for a reason. It reflects that. The title track is written by C. Khan. It is Room for All. It's performed by Sarah Lynch Thomason and Sam Gleaves. And it's about the union and how the union is here. If you're going to join a labor union, it's here for everybody. It's here for all. Of course, I have the No Kings song by Joan Baez and Jesse Wells. I have the great S.G. Goodman doing a version of Which Side Are You On? And then I allowed, as Joe talked about in his notes that he sent me, I allowed the algorithm. I don't like the robot. I don't like the AI. I don't like the algorithm. But I'm telling you, the search engine in these streaming services is pretty amazing. And it can help you find songs really well around a theme-based mixtape. And also it makes suggestions based on your playlist. They'll make you more suggestions. And so I was able to dig pretty deep and find songs that not only fit the topics I was looking for, but also the moods. I did end with a gospel song, the Hillbilly Thomists, which are a bluegrass band of like Catholic monks, which of course I would have in my playlist because that's just like a jam for me. But one of the other themes that I have here, and it's aspirational, of course, is that we on the left, liberal, left, progressive, whatever, we stop fighting amongst ourselves and find ways to unite and to support each other during these strange times, because we definitely do have a common enemy in totalitarianism and white Christian nationalism, and we've got our work cut out for us. But I hope you'll listen to my playlist. It's, I think, filled with joy and a lot of like amazing songs by a lot of amazing kind of not at the, even at the Molly Tuttle level of Americana, but like a couple of notches down into the underground of folk and Americana. And I think you all will really, really enjoy the playlist. And I'm going to now pivot to Mark to tell us about reading the Bard through an American lens. I can't wait. Hey, Mark. Unmute yourself, sir.
There we go. Now, can you? Okay, good. Shakespeare is such a part of my daily life, and I can say that even it doesn't matter whether I'm directing a play or teaching a class that's focused on Shakespeare. I see Shakespeare everywhere. It's like I see dead people. I see Shakespeare everywhere. Because Shakespeare is everywhere. I mean, and so when I was thinking about this assignment, I thought to myself, Shakespeare has inspired so many musicians. And so I started to put together right off the top of my head songs. In fact, the first one, which is the first one on my playlist, which is Lou Reed's Romeo Had Juliet, which is such a great song. And Romeo and Juliet we see that throughout the influence of things. And there, of course, is the Dire Straits song, Romeo and Juliet. But the Dire Straits, when I read your instructions a little closer and realized I needed to find all American artists, I really did my best to stick to American artists, and it turned out it wasn't that hard. I'm not going to read my whole thing that I wrote, but there's just a couple things I want to read. I cannot get enough of Shakespeare. His plays simply ignite my imagination and make me want to enter the worlds he has created. In the plays of the Bard, love triumphs, at least in the comedies, and in the tragedies, love goes out with a bang. The entire experience of being human can be found in the plays of William Shakespeare. Mad kings end up broken and humiliated, cradling their dead daughters, or often handless, disemboweled, or headless. Shakespeare is everywhere, in songs, in television shows, in movies, and in commercials. Once you start looking for him, you see him everywhere. Shakespeare references have appeared in everything from Star Trek to Happy Days to The Simpsons. The first Shakespeare movie was made in 1899. It was a silent film of Shakespeare's rarely produced play King John, starring Shakespearean actor Herbert Beerbohm Tree, who has the coolest of actors' names in the history of the profession. He's also influenced so many films such as West Side Story, Kiss Me Kate, Warm Bodies, Anybody But You, 10 Things About Me, 10 Things I Hate About You, The Northman. And if you look at music, you see Shakespeare's influence from the classics like Mendelssohn and Tchaikovsky to contemporary artists as diverse as Bruce Springsteen, Taylor Swift, Elvis Costello, the band, Tupac, and the Indigo Girls, just to name a few. As with music, Shakespeare wrestles with questions of love, hate, jealousy, lust, envy, and desire. He writes of young love, old love, improbable love, and impossible love. Shakespeare's plays share something else in common with the songs of musicians. They are very aware of the audience, and they involve the audience, and they invite the audience into the worlds created by the artist. So that's just a part of what I wrote for my essay. But I just love the idea of American music inspired by William Shakespeare, because I approach all things Shakespeare as an American. When I approach his shows, I don't direct his shows. I don't ask actors to do, cheesy English accents or anything like that. But let me go through my list real quick. I had Romeo Had Juliet from Lou Reed's New York album. Romeo and Juliet as recorded by the Indigo Girls. Macbeth on a Sonnet from a Sonic Youth album. Tupac recorded a song called Something Wicked. That's a nod, of course, to Macbeth. I had to include Brush Up Your Shakespeare, which is a number by Cole Porter in the musical Kiss Me Kate, which is based on Taming of the Shrew, and features a great performance from the actors James Whitmore and Keenan Wynn. Another recording of Romeo and Juliet by the Killers. Sigh No More by Mumford and Sons. Sigh No More is, of course, a song that appears in his comedy Much Ado About Nothing. They have their own take on it. The Tragically Hip recorded a song called Cordelia, of course, a character from and Titus Andronicus recorded a song, Titus Andronicus Forever. Of course, Titus Andronicus, one of Shakespeare's first plays. Hey There, Ophelia is by a rapper named MC Lars, who I actually hadn't heard of, but it's kind of a fun song. Shakespeare in a Nutshell by Bright Eyes. Ophelia, of course, by the great band, The Band. Get Over It by the Eagles. Not one of my favorite songs of theirs, but it has a Shakespeare reference in it. Ariel by the October Project. It was okay, kind of an okay song. Love Story by Taylor Swift. I never thought I would include Taylor Swift on a mixtape, but it's a great song. And I, of course, stumbled across Bruce Springsteen in his song Frankie Fell in Love, also references Romeo and Juliet. And last time we talked about Elvis Presley. Well, Are You Lonesome Tonight? He literally quotes Shakespeare in All the World's a Stage and All the Men and Women Merely Players. And then I had to include A Midsummer Night's Dream. It's a great orchestral version from A Midsummer Night's Dream, Felix Mendelssohn, performed by the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra. I know he's not a Am I back? Okay. all I said at the end was that is my mixtape, and I had so much fun working on this project. And don't be scared of Shakespeare. Shakespeare talks to all of us constantly. That's it.
Joe, this is my monthly reminder to unmute yourself.
What? I love Shakespeare. I just haven't written him in a while. I botched this assignment like so many others in my life, just sort of interpreted it somewhat and then ran with my misinterpretation. The only American thing about this is that they're all American artists performing. But I took a theme and I made a lot of mixtapes in my life, and I used it as an opportunity to think about mixtapes. And I'm going to read what I wrote. These are props, by the way. My mixtape and my essay are called "If It's Not One Thing, It's Your Mother." I'm fairly certain I invented the mixtape form all by myself, coincidentally at the same time as a few million other people were doing the exact same thing. I'm sure there were several factors motivating me to start. Something just had, like music just started playing in those headphones. That was really weird. Sorry. One was, I'm sure there were several factors motivating me to start. One was to share cool music with friends and hopefully get some new music in return. Another reason was because I could, because I had the tools and because it was fun. The last reason was to get into, with heartfelt and deeply sincere good intentions, some young woman or other's pants. I was aware of the last reason only peripherally at first, but as soon as I became aware of the it, that's when I became a little bit calculating, not unlike some of the men in these songs, I suppose. These days when I make a playlist, it's mostly a fun exercise and a way to discover music. I might share them, but I don't expect anyone to listen to them all the way through or with the same care that I put into creating them. I don't expect anybody to reach back to me and tell me how much one of the songs meant to them or prompt from them an immediate in-kind response. That's how it is in my corner of the world in 2026. I accept that. It's sad to think of, but even the modern analog of a greasy cassette comp is now likely to feel like just another slab of media meat to be consumed. But the need for the exercise persists in me. Can I come up with 15 to 20 tunes that all reference helicopters or sports or booty? More of a musical tribute to asses than to getting some ass. I was going to take a shot at filling out one of those ideas for this project, but then I had the idea to make it a playlist about fathers and fathering. But I couldn't leave out the moms, could I? That's half the story. So this is a playlist about music's varied emotional responses to their moms and dads, how our parents fuck us up and how they heal us. Back in the day, I would have never picked a song I didn't know backwards and forwards. Those cassettes were supposed to be love bombs, a shot against your bow on the expressway to your heart. One could not afford to be a dilettante if the music was meant to jack into somebody's soul. All those songs had meaning, deep personal meaning. They had weight. These days, I use keyword searches to fill the holes. Digital media on demand means there's a giant wave of sound ready to wash you out to sea at any time. As a result, it's hard to keep that tool in the bag. That tool could save you. Why would one poo-poo a whole universe of sound to make a point anyway? Yet every time I do use the algorithm, I feel kind of cheap or like I'm betraying 19-year-old me. That Joe would be incredulous that I picked daddy lessons from a list of search results. Turn out it's a great tune, duh. And country music, forget about it. I didn't even dabble in rap. One might include a Hank Williams tune to troll for unearned cool points, or maybe just for the sake of an irony, which I didn't fully understand. It would be a few years before Alanis Morissette came around and straightened me out on that front. In some ways, good mixtapes are the result of dozens of discrete chemical reactions. Every song has a job, and each pairing, coming and going, can be explosive. I think the greatest segues were just dumb luck, especially during the mixtape renaissance. Unless you had two turntables, and nobody had two turntables, it would take too great an effort to line things up just so. even if you were trying to get inside someone's pants. But a great segue, accent or not, takes my breath away. You can't rig that sort of response. You can't draw it out at will. You can only hope 2 or 3 songs find each other from amongst the throbbing, massive songs you just dumped in a pile on your desk. That's when the magic happens. I once segued Ella Fitzgerald's Happiness is a Thing Called Dead Joe into the Birthday Party's Dead Joe, or Happiness is a Thing Called Joe into the Birthday Party's Dead Joe. And that track transition knocks me to my ass to this day. If you want to hear it, I got a playlist called Happiness is a Thing Called Dead Joe. It's a lot easier to make, I can send it to you. It's a lot easier to make those musical moments happen today. And that, I believe, is a good thing. Then there's song selection itself. I hope for an embarrassment of riches to have too many good choices for myriad reasons. For myriad reasons, it is painful to eliminate one. Digital streaming allows for that. You might eliminate songs as good as they are because they just don't fit in. They don't play nice with the other tunes. Sometimes one does it for very specific reasons. Like, I kicked Bruce off the island for Stacy's mom, and I did it just to Toral Greenberg. Ha! Does anybody even like Stacy's mom? I don't, and yet here it is. The title of this mixtape is a quote from Sigmund Freud. I cycled through a number of different titles, and none of them felt right. So I looked to our first master of the human mind. Who better to turn, well, maybe it was Shakespeare. Who better to turn to for wise words about parenting? I read a lot of Freud quotes, and I can confirm, as if you needed a conversation, that motherfucker was bonkers. But the quote I came up with, it seemed, which is the title, if it's not one thing, it's your mother. It almost seems like he was poking fun at his own work. That's what I'd like to believe anyway. If this playlist was something other than a thought exercise, it was a meditation on parenting. I could have called it, How Can One Be So Wrong So Much of the Time? As I often say to my lovely and patient wife, parenting sucks. I hate it. I love it. My kids are the best part of my life. I must confess that while I picked these songs for their perceived meanings distinct from the music itself, I didn't listen to them and ponder the meanings as I went. I love a song I can feel. I almost never try to interpret a song's meaning. But alchemy does happen if you're ready for it. It might be the 40th time you've heard a song, or the 400th, or the first. You might be driving on a road somewhere in the middle of nowhere, or stuck in traffic in the big city. A light bulb goes off in your head. The song finds its way in. They're little love bombs, remember? Sometimes they blow up in your hands. Sometimes their fuses stay lit for days. All right, that's that. It's a 21 song list, and I just added one today, Earl King's Mother's Love, because I was just shuffling through music and that popped up, and I felt that was Earl saying, you need me on your list. What the hell? So I put him on. He earned it. Check it out. It's fun.
So we got plenty of time for a discussion. So I don't know if anybody's seen the film Perks of Being a Wallflower. It's based on a book, and the book is written as like with letters and stuff like this. But in the movie version, the protagonist, Charlie, has an older sister, and the older sister has a boyfriend who keeps giving her mixtapes, and she doesn't want the mixtapes. She's so sick of the boyfriend giving her mixtapes, but Charlie loves the mixtapes, and Charlie wants to become really, really fluent in mixtapes. And all he talks about with the woman he's crushing on, who, of course, I have to call Hermione Granger because it's played by that woman who played Hermione Granger in the original Harry Potter series. Anyway, is that he loves mixtapes. So, and like one of the like things they're doing in school is they're making fanzines. You know, it's like it's very much a portrait of the 80s and 90s when we still had the cassettes and we still had fanzines. And of course, today with the younger Gen Z, the fanzine itself and the cassette based mixtape have made a full comeback. When I first taught mixtapes to Jesse Filateo, now I've taught mixtapes to hundreds of students who's just kind of an eye roll, and they're like, does it matter if it's on Apple Music, YouTube, or Spotify? And I'm like, no, whatever you prefer is fine. But this guy got so obsessed with mixtapes that he went out and bought all these old Walkmans, many of them that didn't work. But he found one that was a recorder, like an actual recorder as well as a Walkman, bought a blank cassette, put it in the recorder, and then he figured out with how the using the aux cord to take his music off his phone and put it on the cassette. diminishing the, all the things. And he was obsessed that the cassette recorded from the aux cord off his phone was the better and superior object. I kid you not. And Jesse tragically at 25 years old fell off a mountain in Colorado and died 2 summers ago. But yeah, the certain style of kids today that realize this analog, there's something to this analog thing. And I'm always seeing Joe and Mark bringing their vinyls to the pod. Birmingham Scott, we miss him so badly for he's moved on to other endeavors. He would always bring the records, and I'm the guy that hoards the analog, but I actually hadn't been listening to it, and I've actually been making a conscious effort to like transition off of listening to everything on the phone and trying to listen to stuff on physical media again, because I think it's so important. And Joe, I think you really just captured the transition from making a mixtape to how it's almost too easy to make a playlist. Y'all just chime in.
I had this weird thought, and I'll just go ahead and throw it out there. But building off of Joe, your discussion about being a parent, isn't creating children, is that the ultimate analog? Like we've just created. Like I hold up my boy. Here he is. Look at him. I made that. My wife and I made this.
It's analog and analog. Yeah, and certainly one of the great drivers of art since art has been a thing. The relationship between parents and their children, like Freud, he wasn't onto anything, but maybe it was all a joke. I don't know, but that struggle was ancient.
Yeah.
It's weird, Mark, that you said that, because given the people who weren't able to make it tonight, this is a dad cast. Everybody on my little Hollywood square here is a dad. So dad rock cast tonight. Rick, I really thought you really did something bold by taking that Reagan idea and reinterpreting it, one, and then two, cultivating a really good 80s playlist. It was fantastic.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. The older I get, the more I'm aware that I got an alternative education from some of the music that was in the air, during that time. It was just really, it was kind of eye-opening for me, because I had always bought into the myth that I had missed the great age of culturally relevant protest music. That was the 60s, maybe the early 70s, but the 80s were all Sheen and Aquanet and whatnot. But there was I was surprised to see that there was a lot of stuff just bubbling under the ground there. And if you put your ear to the ground, you were going to learn some things about America that weren't all glossed up and sunshine and rainbows.
I think because of all the hype about the 60s and 70s and of course the 90s, the 80s often get left out. Just like Gen X, we get left out. Mark actually qualifies as a boomer. I mean, Gen X, we get left out because the boomers and the millennials have captivated so much of the popular attention. But I don't know, Mark, do you identify as a boomer, or do you feel more X-y?
Oh gosh. I don't really feel like a boomer. I mean, I was born in 61, so I was right at the tail end. But I don't know.
I only use that stuff when I find it helpful, which is sometimes, but like the chart that I can look up on the internet tells me that the cutoff is 64, and my wife, who was born 1 year before you, she definitely identifies as late boomer more than, and that also too, her musical tastes are very much rooted in the late 70s, for sure.
Yeah, and I really do. The music that I love and I listen to is all the stuff I did discover in the early early to mid 70s, when I was really falling in love with music and falling in love with buying vinyl, and got my first turntable, and instead of playing them on my parents had one of those gigantic wooden boxes with the built-in turntable, and I would play that in the living room, much to my father's chagrin. He really didn't want to listen to Kiss Alive playing on his old stereo, and so they finally got me a turntable and a stereo for my bedroom. Oh my goodness.
Joe, you had a basement layer in Lathrop or in Southfield or wherever you live. We used Lathrop Village. We used to go down to your basement layer all the time.
Yeah, I kind of lucked out on that front. I had a stepbrother, Rob, who's passed, but he decided he was going to move in with us, and we built this room in the basement for him and our other stepbrother, David, and David left, and Rob wanted to switch with me, so I got the basement to myself, and that was like a rocket, like I had this room to myself. Nobody came down there. It was,
So it was a real man cave, and you had all the records, man. Always had the best record collection.
I had a fish tank.
So
I didn't realize it was a cartoon, but that I was.
It's Joe's basement tapes.
Yeah, for sure. Good times in the basement.
I still have a few of your old ones that you made me. I had some from mutual friends of ours, but a lot of them I put them in and they don't survive. They didn't survive. They didn't age well. The actual cassettes, some of them definitely don't age well. But I was talking with the archivist at the university here, and she says digital decay is real, and it's very sketchy if you're actually somebody who preserves materials for like later generations for scholars and stuff like that. Having digital stuff that people like, if you want to go visit a university archive that's in California, if they've digitized their collection, it's very helpful because you can look at the PDFs and the pictures and all this. But she said there's nothing like preserving actual physical objects. It's just not the same to preserve digital files, and that she thinks that many of the physical objects will far outlast the digital ones, just in terms of, and also think about too, like early computing. Like if somebody donated a bunch of like floppy disks to an archive, no one has anything to read them on.
Well, it's weird. I was playing one of my wife's Beatles albums recently, and she swore upside and down. She said, "I know exactly where the skip is going to come because I've listened to it so many times." But on this, this is a relatively new turntable that I'm using, and it just went right over. And she just was sitting there, and the look on her face, she's like, "But that's where the skip is." And you could hear a slight something, but it did not skip. And I'm like, it's just amazing to me, these old records. I look at some of these records that didn't, that I picked up for $3 or $4 or whatever. And I'm thinking, doesn't look very good. Put it on, plays great. Not other than the little pops and clicks, which are so lovely. Not skipping. It's amazing to me.
Go ahead.
I was just going to geek out, so you can stop me. I was
going to actually geek out too. Go ahead, you geek first.
I was going to ask Mark what he's got.
It's not even. It's just an Audio Technica that I got. I think I got it online, like from Amazon or something.
Nice.
But it's just got a great sound, and I don't know, it's a few $100s, and it's got great sound, and it plays everything. And very rarely. I said that, but I was just before I logged on, I was listening to a Jeff Beck Group album that I had picked up for $3 or $4, and it did skip in the middle of one of the songs, and I went like, I guess there's going to be some that it's not going to work for. But
a couple of years ago, I went on this ridiculous audiophile thread on X, formerly known as Twitter. And I did not really understand a lot of the terms that people were using, but there seemed to be a growing consensus that good CDs made from the right kind of files are the best sounding things around, that CDs sound better than anything else. And in my stereo that I've got one of those old changer CD decks that I bought used several years ago, and I do think the CDs sound better than the records. But I also think the equipment matters, and I don't think I have anything close to the right equipment. And Rick has gone way out of his way to assemble a machine at his house that plays vinyl. And his vinyls, everything sounds better at Rick's house. Like I just want to like move in with my record collection and just listen to all my records on Rick's stereo because they sound so good. Mark, I don't know if you remember that guy Garrett Hongo that we had at that poet friend of Aaron Hoover's a couple years ago, but he had just written a book about being an audiophile and collecting, getting the right equipment, And I've heard about this new Atmos, where like if you buy all the speakers correctly, the sound like happens in space between you and this, like it's supposed to be amazing.
Wow.
And like there's new recording technology that like songs are being released in Atmos, and if you have the right Atmos equipment in your surround sound room, which will only cost you a few grand, I think, to get all the right components for it, it's supposed to sound just absolutely incredible.
I have a few box sets that came with Atmos CDs that I have no way of listening to, but I've seen them show up. I should find somebody who can use them.
Yeah, if I ever come to a windfall enough, I will. I might assemble it. But the windfall I got this year is taking me to Ireland, not getting me a new stereo. So.
Oh, that's great.
Ireland. Ooh.
Gus loved it so much he went back this year again, which is kind of amazing for his spring break.
And he was talking to Jennifer and I about going next spring for his friend Maddie is going to graduate with her master's degree, and is talking about going back. And I'm like, look, we love Ireland. Mm-hmm. I wish I could go back.
I mean, we might, depending on what happens between now and July. I don't know. I did get a return ticket, but I
was listening to a podcast interview today with Dennis Leary. He was on Conan O'Brien, and he's filming a show right now. And the whole film crew is working in Ireland because Ireland's film industry is just exploding so much that they just make so many. It's so inexpensive to be able to film in Ireland that it's worth it for people to go there. And he was just talking about, of course, he's family's from Ireland, but I was just sitting listening to it going, wow, that just sounds so great. It's time to go back.
You all want to mention any recent musical discoveries, any recent listens or new releases that you're particularly excited about?
I've discovered nothing new. I got a copy of Lou Reed. Speaking of Lou Reed, I love New York is great. Do you have that vinyl?
Yeah.
Box set they came out with?
It's incredible.
His guitar always sounds so great. That was like his thing. And he it's just something to listen to. I recently found a good used copy of New Sensations, which is very 80s record, but it's a blast. And every once in a while, he'd release something that was peak, like peak Lou Reed, and that's something that I hadn't listened to a lot that I rediscovered, but that's a great sounding record.
I saw Andy, you may have heard me tell this story, but I saw Lou Reed play at the Ryman with Kurt Eisen, and I went many years ago and saw Lou Reed, and all through the concert, some drunk guy 2 or 3 rows from the stage was screaming "Walk on the Wild Side" over and over again. And clearly Lou had no interest in playing that night. And he, and this guy kept screaming and screaming and screaming. And there was just this funny moment where Lou basically, I guess he just kind of shrugged and said, "Fuck it." And he and the band launched into the fastest "Walk on the Wild Side" we'd ever heard in our lives. You could barely understand a single word of the song. He was playing it and singing it so fast just because, fine, you want it, here it is. Now it's over. We're moving on with the stuff I want to do.
That's awesome.
Well, I hate leaving concerts early, but sometimes I make myself leave early for the traffic and not getting stuck in traffic. But several years ago, we left Bob Dylan early, and we're going home, and Jeannie's like, why isn't he playing Blowing in the Wind? I really wanted to hear Blowing in the Wind. I'm like, he never, look up his set list. He never plays Blowing in the Wind. Well, he played Blowing in the Wind that night with the McCrary sisters doing a full gospel choir, backing him up for Blowing in the Wind. McCrary sisters, of course, who accompanied him on Slow Train Coming, and also who were in Mike Ferris's band when they came to Tech several years ago. I hosted Mike Ferris at the Playhouse, Mark, and the McCrarys were there. That was around 2010. So anyway, that's, don't leave early if you can help it, because you're probably going to miss something amazing. New listens. Any new listens, Rick?
Yeah, I listened to Jesse De Silva's new album, Glitter in the Dark, which came out, I think, last week. And it has a really like 70s singer-songwriter vibe, a little Fleetwood Mac-ish. It's about joy and resilience. Really good. It's been a few weeks, but I enjoyed the new Jill Scott album as well. And this isn't a new find, but we were talking about the joys of vinyl and crate digging. And Gen X. I'll throw in the Gen X thing here. I found a sweet copy of a Sesame Street record. My name is Roosevelt Franklin, and it just reminds me of the wonder that was Sesame Street and the way it opened up worlds for suburban kids like me to see a lot of different things. And as my son has taught me, my son works at a record store here in Nashville. They'll get children's records in all day long, but you hardly ever find them in good condition because children were playing with them. But anyway, so those are my recent listens and finds.
I have a Sesame Street record that I found not too long ago. That's Pete Seeger and Reverend Kirkpatrick, and they're singing really like very subversive songs about the people, loving the people for the people, very, very socialistic, kind of environmentalistic, anti-war songs and all the things. Anyway, it's a beautiful, beautiful record. It's a Sesame Street album. There's a band out of the United Kingdom called Brown Horse, which I just think is a great band name, Brown Horse. And they released an amazing album last year. It charted on my end of the year last year, and they just come out with their brand new album. I'll tell you what it's called. It came out just last Friday. And they are doing their first ever. They're a new band. They haven't been around that long, and they're doing their first ever United States tour. And I'm very excited to be going up to Michigan to see them. The name of the album is Total Dive, and the name of the band is Brown Horse. And I've been trying to listen to all the new U2 albums. They put out an EP at the beginning of Lent, and then they put out an EP for Easter weekend, which I listened to both of those a lot. I think I mentioned my other top new records on the last pod because they'd already come out. New Mumford & Sons, New Langhorne Slim. I finally got to see Ryan Davis and the Roadhouse Band again, and I've taken more time with their 2025 album, which is just absolutely fantastic. And I've got a very heavy concert agenda coming up, starting with the High Water Festival this weekend, and of course Bruce Springsteen in 2 weeks. And I originally planned to go to Florence and the Machine at Bridgestone on May 2nd, and then I chose Springsteen in Atlanta instead. We'll come to find out Florence and the Machine is playing in Atlanta at the same venue as The Boss on Friday. And I decided, my brother has never been to Atlanta, and I decided he's joining us. I'm going with Mark and Gus as well. Driving down to Atlanta on Friday. We're going to see Florence and the Machine on Friday, Bruce Springsteen on Saturday. And that's what I call a weekend right there. So
wow, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm excited about Springsteen. This will be my 15th time seeing him, so fairly low in the land of people who go a lot. But I'm looking forward to seeing this show. It looks like it's going to be really special.
So,
and he loves Atlanta.
In case your family members ever think your habit is too serious, Springsteen's your number one, right? So my totals for Jason Isbell, U2, and My Morning Jacket all total around 40 concerts each. And that's not even close to some of the fans that I meet out there in the world. They're in the hundreds of shows of each band.
there's always going to be run into a person next to you who's seen twice as many as you.
Right.
And these Billy Strings fans today, they're putting Bruce Springsteen fans and Deadheads to shame. I mean, these Billy Strings kids are like serious about seeing Billy every single time.
Joanne, my wife, and I are going back up to Woodstock to see They Might Be Giants, which is the first time I've seen them. We just thought that would be a fun show to see at a small place, and they're bringing a full 8-piece band. And,
is that going to be at the Bearsville also?
Yes.
Yeah, I can't wait to get up there and see that venue finally. I've been to Woodstock several times, but not that venue. Mark, have you ever been to Woodstock?
I haven't. I wish I had.
Rick, neither of you?
Nope.
Man, I can't tell you guys enough about that. And Joe, you still haven't been to White Lake to the Bethel Woods Museum, have you? Oh man, it's really special.
I almost got there last year, but I sold my Neil Young tickets at great profit. So
stand in that field, the very field, and just pick any Woodstock set you want, and just put it on your headphones while you stand in that field. It's an exhilarating feeling.
Yeah.
Well, gang, stay on the call for just like a couple seconds after we hang up to the internet, and let's schedule the May call. And one of you, Joe just did Elvis cast, so Rick or Mark, one of you guys is going to be on. So thank you all for attending the Music Nerds Record Club number 25 for April 2026. I will put together on my blog, www.teacherontheradio.com, all of the playlists that were submitted tonight. So thank you all for participating and playing along with me, making you do the same homework I make my students do. And Mark, you got an A+. All of you got an A+. I did have a moment though when I saw Shakespeare in the title. I'm like, Shakespeare's not American. But you know what? I did want to say, Rick and Scott were so on point, but Joe, I want you to hear this. You can be too on point. Sometimes my students see the assignment, and that means all I get is like Lee Greenwood and Toby Keith playlists. And so you can be too on point about how American you want to be in your interpretation of the American playlist. So I really would rather read about moms and dads and Shakespeare than I would another Lee Greenwood, Toby Keith playlist. So just saying,
You probably know who's going to deliver those too.
Actually, some of my rednecks really surprised me. This cowboy redneck guy just gave me a Waylon Jennings paper the other day that was actually quite excellent. But yeah. So I'm always willing to be surprised. But yes, they write the two big projects is they write about an album and they write about. Then they make the playlists. And so the album project, I still do get a lot of Morgan Wallen for the album project. But the hip hop is really interesting because I'm not a hip hop person. And so Mark, I'm texting Gus every time. What about this art? What about this artist? But I've learned a lot of hip hop, and people like emo, they like metal, they like classic rock. I mean, the tastes are very varied. I had a student do a paper this semester on Gwar. I think that was the first time I'd ever have a student write about Gwar, so I was pretty impressed.
Gwar, I saw them.
Wow.
I saw them at Bonnaroo.
Nerds, see you next month. Thank you all so much for participating. And one of the two guys below me right here is going to be teaching us something next month. So tune in on my YouTube channel every month for the Music Nerds Record Club.